If you want to become a better storyteller, stop telling stories about yourself. I know that sounds ridiculous, and of course your story is about you. You were there, it happened to you. You made the mistake or learned the lesson. But here's the problem. The moment a story becomes primarily about you, the audience has to decide whether they care about you enough to keep listening. And most of the time they don't. Not because they're selfish, because people naturally listen through the filter of their own lives. That's the part most storytelling advice misses. We're constantly told, tell your story or share your journey. Be authentic, let people see the real you. The advice isn't necessarily wrong, but it creates a bad habit. People start asking, what happened to me that would make a good story? I think there's a better question. What will this story help the listener recognize about themselves? I think that changes everything. Imagine someone says, when I was 28, I quit my job, started a company, lost everything, rebuilt it, and eventually became successful. That might be an extraordinary life story, but if I can't find myself anywhere inside it, I'm basically watching someone else's highlight reel. Now imagine the storyteller says something like this. There was a point when I realized I wasn't staying in my job because I liked it. I was staying because I was afraid to discover whether I was actually capable of doing something else. Now I'm listening. Even if I've never started a business, even if I have no intention of quitting my job, because I know fear, I know rationalizing, I know what it feels like to wonder whether comfort has quietly become a cage. Now your story is no longer just about you. I have entered it. And that, I think, is where good storytelling begins. The events belong to the storyteller, but the meaning has to belong to the audience. That's why some people can tell you about an incredible experience and somehow make it boring. They went somewhere extraordinary, met someone famous, survived something difficult, built something very impressive, but the entire story keeps saying, look what happened to me. And the audience is left standing outside of it. Meanwhile, someone else can tell you about missing a flight, embarrassing themselves in a meeting, getting into an argument with their spouse, or realizing they were completely wrong about something, and you can't stop listening. Why is that? Because somewhere in the ordinary story you recognize yourself. This matters far beyond speeches or YouTube videos. It matters in leadership, sales, job interviews, presentations, even teaching. Everyday conversations have a place here too. Suppose you're interviewing for a job and someone asks about a difficult leadership experience. You could tell them, I managed a team of 30 people during a complicated project, and through my leadership we successfully completed it. Technically, that answers the question, but it mostly tells them what you did. A better version might be something like this, in my opinion. I've learned something during that project that I think a lot of managers learn too late. When a team stops bringing you bad news, it doesn't mean the problem's disappeared. It usually means they stop trusting you with them. Now the experience is yours. But the insight belongs to everyone listening. That's the difference. You don't have to remove yourself from the story. You have to stop making yourself the reason the story matters. And there's a simple test you can use. Before you tell a story, ask yourself, where does the listener enter? Where is the moment when they think, I felt that? Or, I've done that. I know someone like that. I never thought about it that way. If you can't find that moment, you may have an interesting memory, but you may not have a very good story yet. And there's another benefit to thinking this way. It actually makes storytelling less performative. You no longer have to make yourself sound fascinating. You don't need to exaggerate. You don't need to make every experience dramatic. Because your job isn't to impress the audience with the life you've lived. Your job is to use your experience to reveal something they recognize in theirs. And ironically, that usually makes you much more interesting. So yes, tell your stories, tell people what happened, tell them what you saw, and tell them what you got wrong. But remember, your experience may be the subject of the story. But you shouldn't be the point of it. The best personal stories don't leave people thinking. When an interesting person, they leave people thinking, I've never looked at my own life that way before. And that's why if you want to become a better storyteller, stop telling stories about yourself.